Good morning, everyone. My name is Laura Plummer, and I'm the statewide Assistive Technology Program Coordinator with WisTech, Wisconsin's Assistive Technology Program, and the Department of Health Services. So thank you for joining today for our webinar on literacy access, the integration of digital literacy and AI, or artificial intelligence, into program services. So a little bit of housekeeping before we begin. We will be using the webinar platform, which does mean that your cameras are off and your microphones are automatically muted. For interaction throughout today, feel free to use the chat as well as the Q&A if you'd like to pose questions. And both myself and our speaker will go ahead and keep track of that chat as we move through. And we've also got one short poll and then some other interaction opportunities through chat throughout. We do have closed captioning provided, which is accessible through the button on the bottom of your screen to turn captions on or off. And we also have sign language interpreters available. Today's webinar is being recorded, and it will be archived for sharing or later viewing on the WisTech YouTube channel. And we also will be offering CRCs, which are Certified Rehabilitation Counselor credits, and CEUs. And in order to get those CEUs and CRCs, you will need to complete a short survey with a couple questions following today's webinar. So you have two chances. One, the survey will pop up immediately after the webinar closes, but you'll also get a second chance to fill it out tomorrow with a reminder email that automatically comes from Zoom. And those CRCs and CEUs are issued within 30 days. So it is a manual process. So I will be issuing those within 30 days of today. If it's beyond that and you thought you should get CEUs, then feel free to reach out. Aside from that, I think we are ready to go with today's webinar. So I just wanted to say thank you and welcome to Jamie Cobbs. I'll let her give a little more introduction. But I had the opportunity to hear Jamie do a short presentation as part of the broadband and digital access. I guess it's a work group, I would say, through the Public Service Commission. And I was just very fascinated by the work that Wisconsin Literacy is doing in the space of our digital literacy and our learning as our world continues to evolve, as well as how we're all getting exposed and using artificial intelligence. So I'm going to turn it over to Jamie, and welcome and thank you.
Thank you, Laura, for that nice introduction. Again, my name is Jamie Cobes. It is not a phonetic spelling, so yeah, it's Cobes. I am a manager of tutor training and digital literacy at Wisconsin Literacy. And today, here's the agenda that I have for you. I would like to just briefly talk about the definition of literacy because it is such a broad term. I want to give a rationale for why I believe we should integrate digital literacy into any programming that we're doing, and then why artificial intelligence should be considered part of digital literacy. Finally, I will cover some approaches and tools. So approaches to integration, routines that you can build in any kind of instruction that you're doing, and resources. First, a little bit about Wisconsin Literacy. We are a nonprofit coalition of literacy agencies. You can see on the map here of Wisconsin, we have over 80 member agencies across the state. These agencies are also nonprofits, and they work with mostly adult education, but they do family and children literacy as well. Wisconsin Literacy strengthens literacy statewide through expert training, personalized consultations, workforce connection, and advocacy. My role at Wisconsin Literacy is I'm a manager of tutor training and digital literacy programs. So I have two things that are keeping me pretty busy these days. The first one, in our digital literacy program, we are working on a device distribution project. We received a grant through the PSC, and that allows us to distribute 3,000 laptops through our member agencies to their learners. In addition, as the tutor training manager, I work on creating and facilitating live and online tutor training courses because most of our literacy agencies rely on volunteer tutors to teach adult learners. Previously, I was a French teacher, an English teacher, and a reading teacher in public schools. You may see that come out in my presentation style, but also I love interacting with the audience. So please let me know in the chat if you have any questions. All right, so what is literacy? We do have a traditional definition of literacy, and a lot of our member agencies offer programming within this traditional definition. So they offer English language learning classes. They offer adult literacy or foundational education classes. And then they also offer GED or HSED, so those high school equivalency programs. Wisconsin Literacy also likes to encourage and support its members in what we call a whole person literacy approach. So, this is literacy that allows people to function in their daily lives, in the workplace. What does workplace literacy look like? Taking care of their health, so health literacy, financial literacy, citizenship, and finally, digital literacy. I spend a lot of time first making sure that people understand what we mean by digital literacy. I really like this definition. It comes from the American Library Association. So, digital literacy is our ability to use digital technologies to find information, evaluate information, organize, create, and communicate information. So if you just look at those five verbs there, those are the actions of a literate person. Digital literacy means that we know how to use digital tools to do those things. So I'd like to stop and launch a poll now so I can learn a little bit about you all who are joining me and how you use digital skills. So the question in the poll will be, how have you used digital skills this week? It's Wednesday, so we've only had a few days in the week, but I bet we can come up with some. And you'll have several options like shopping and entertainment, finance, healthcare, transportation, and work in education.
All right, I will do my best. This is Laura, I'm not a skilled polls person, but I think we can make this happen. Is everyone seeing the poll? Looks like we are. We've got some responses. So the question is, how have you used digital skills this week? Check all that apply. Work or education, transportation, travel, shopping, entertainment, health, or finance. Again, check all that apply.
I'm seeing the question says it's a single choice, so you may only be able to check one. So let's see what wins today.
Okay, sorry, that would be
That's
my
okay.
bad. I'm not a skilled polls creator. I need to improve my digital literacy skills on creating and using polls within Zoom, apparently. Some of you may be thinking, oh, I want to change my answer.
Yeah. No, the frustration is good if you're thinking that, because that truly is the point that I wanted to make, is that they're everywhere in life. Life is permeated by these digital skills and the need for digital skills now. But yes, it looks like work and education is definitely winning, followed by healthcare, shopping and entertainment, and then finance and transportation or travel. I am going to end the poll. I'll quickly share results so you all can see that. Thank you for participating. Okay, so in my job as the manager of digital literacy and tutor training, I have noticed as I started training volunteer tutors that in order to teach digital literacy, the tutors and the instructors really need to feel confident themselves in their own skills, and comfortable taking a co-learning approach. So they're not the expert anymore. They are co-learning with an adult learner. And much of my job has become convincing programs to teach the digital skills so it doesn't feel like just one more thing that they have to do. So they have this content or their programming, and I'm encouraging them to integrate digital skills and supporting them as they integrate. So the next few slides that you're going to see are really my rationale for why we should integrate digital skills into any programming that we do. The first one, as you saw in that poll, or maybe felt, wishing that you could choose more than one answer, that digital skills are really just essential for full participation in society. And so all adult learners or clients that we work with should have opportunities to learn them. Put in a little bit more cynical way, the United Nations just celebrated National Literacy Day, and their focus this year was literacy in the digital age. And they said while digital tools can help expand learning opportunities for marginalized groups, including 739 million young people and adults who lack basic literacy skills, the digital shift that we're experiencing also risks creating a double marginalization. That means exclusion not only from traditional literacy learning, but also from the benefits of the digital age. The second reason for integrating digital skills is that we don't always get learners that are explicitly asking for digital skills. You don't know what you don't know, right? And so sometimes we get learners that come to our agencies and they say, I want to learn computer skills. But more often than not, it sounds more like these things. I want to get a GED. I want to get a better job. I want to be able to communicate with my doctor without an interpreter there. And so I encourage tutors and instructors in our programs to recognize that there are digital skills and digital vocabulary required to achieve those learning goals. So it's important to integrate. And another reason is that it makes the relevance clear when you integrate it into the content that you're already teaching. Just a personal example, Excel spreadsheets are my nemesis. If you ask me, hey, Jamie, do you want to learn Excel? I would say, no, thanks, I'm good. But if you show me that you can use Excel to create a really cool thermometer graph that shows my laptop distribution progress, it makes the relevance very clear to me in what I'm already doing. And it suddenly becomes more engaging to show my team, hey, look at this, our progress in our laptop distribution. So integrating digital skills with your content, they work hand in hand. It also makes that content more engaging or accessible. And finally, we don't always get consistent attendance or a lot of time with learners, adult learners especially. And so if they're coming already for an English language learning class or a GED class, integrating the digital skills is a way to honor their limited time. Just checking in on the chat. Is there anything that I need to address, Laura?
I don't believe so. Kate did share a nice example of kind of her journey with literacy. So I think that was helpful if people wanted to. She not really didn't learn to read until later on in master's degree program.
Okay, thank you. So then we move into artificial intelligence, excuse me, or AI. So why should we integrate AI literacy? According to UNESCO, AI has the potential to profoundly reshape societies, economies, and education systems, and it poses unique ethical and social challenges, including issues of fairness, transparency, privacy, and accountability. It requires dedicated competencies beyond the scope of traditional literacy, digital literacy. There's also a National Digital Inclusion Alliance, and they are sort of a front runner in digital inclusion practices and policies. So, according to the NDIA, without AI literacy, an individual may be unable to identify or challenge unfair practices. They're more susceptible to AI-aided scams, unprepared to vet answers produced by AI, unable to protect personal information, and they may be working inefficiently because they do not know how to leverage AI tools. So the NDIA really comes from the perspective that AI skills are digital skills and they should be integrated into digital skill programs. This last one is where I get, it's a really good entry point as I talk to our volunteer tutors and instructors. AI is a way that you can work more efficiently to plan your lessons for learners. When I do tutor training, I talk about these AI best practices. The first one, goals before tools. I think sometimes teachers, but maybe just adults in general, we get blinded by shiny new things. And so if we really focus on the fact that we want to use AI to make our instructional planning more efficient, to make learning more accessible for our learners, and if that's not happening, then AI is just a cool tool and you should abandon it and do what you're used to doing. The second best practice is the 80-20 approach. So we can use AI as a springboard and it can do about 80% of the work for us. But that 20%, we are still essential. And that 20% is where we come in and we need to know best practices for prompting AI, best practices for protecting privacy, and best practices for checking bias and accuracy. This is a resource that I love to share with our tutors and instructors. It comes from World Education. They do a lot of makerspace projects where they gather teachers and instructors and they build open educational resources. So this one's called the Open Prompt Book from Camp GPT. So they came up with this art of prompting. So whenever you prompt an AI, generative AI, you should include the role. What role is AI playing for you, or what is your role? The action, what do you want AI to do? The context in which it's working, an example if you have it, and details about the format. How do you want the format to be? So you can see here on the right, you are an instructor in a community-based ESL program. That's the role. Write a rhythm and blues song about shopping at the grocery store that teaches these parts of speech. You have a list here. In the song, make explicit connections between a part of speech and its function and give some examples. Here's the context. Since these are beginners, keep the language simple and straightforward with no idioms or figurative language. And then example, on the shelf, above, below, behind the can, prepositions show us where. Now we have a plan. Okay. There is no format here because I believe the format comes in the action here with the rhythm and blues song. We could get even more specific about the format and ask for, how many verses do you want? Do you want a chorus, etc. Privacy as a best practice. We talk about when you prompt AI, do not include personal information. This includes like your name, names of students that you have or clients that you have. I often avoid even putting in my organization's name. And it also includes any information or documents that you would not consider or that you wouldn't want available to the public. I'm not always clear on AI's privacy practices, and it's a lot of fine print to read. So I just sometimes I think I act overly cautiously and think, do I want this available on the internet? And whether that's right or not, I think it's better to be safe than sorry. So that is what I encourage our tutors and instructors to think about. So I want to quick check your understanding, give you some examples of how the prompting, being very specific in prompting and protecting privacy show up. I'm going to show you some questions on the next screen. It'll be a multiple choice question, and I'm going to ask you to put your answer in the chat. I'd like to try a chat waterfall. This gives everybody time to think and to type before they see everybody else's answers, but it only works if we follow the directions. So here are the directions. In just a minute, I'll show you the question. You can type your answer, A, B, or C, in the chat, but don't hit enter. And I'll wait just a few minutes and then I'll count us down and I'll go 3, 2, 1, and then hit enter. And all of the answers will trickle in like a waterfall at the same time. Let's see how this works. All right, so the first question. You want AI to help you create a plain language flyer explaining how to use a new community bus route that includes a roundabout. Which is the best prompt to get a clear, useful result? Write something about buses, make a flyer. You are a communications specialist. Create a plain language flyer, fifth grade reading level, about how to use the new bus route with a roundabout. Include simple steps and one example of how a person with a disability might use the route to go to the library.
And this is Laura. Just remember, Jamie's a teacher, so she did provide us instruction to not hit enter until she says go. It's okay. It's a learning
Yes.
process. So, and she's got a couple of these, so we have a chance for
Yep. We'll get
following
it right
teacher
this
rules.
next time.
You know it.
All right, go ahead and type your answer. And then I'm going to say 3, 2, 1, enter. Yay. Beautiful. We C for consensus, right? We all agree that C is the best prompt, mostly because it's so specific. We've given them a role, them, AI, lots of specific directions, including reading level and an example. All right, let's try this next question. We'll also do a chat waterfall, so hold on to your answer. Don't hit enter until I say so. You want AI to draft an email reminder about a digital literacy workshop for people with disabilities. Which is the best prompt to use? A, write an email reminder for my client Sam Smith about the digital literacy workshop at 2 p.m. on Wednesday at 123 Main Street. B, you are a program assistant. Write a short, friendly email reminder about a digital literacy workshop. Do not include names, just say participants. Mention the date and time, Wednesday at 2 p.m., and that it will be held at the Independent Living Center. Write an email reminder about the digital literacy workshop at 2 p.m. on Wednesday at 123 Main Street. Here is the actual registration form with participant names and email addresses attached. All right. We're typing our answer, and then in 3, 2, 1, enter. Oh, such a great waterfall this time.
See, we're teachable, Jamie. This is Laura.
All right. I agree. B is the best answer, especially because it's protecting privacy. Um, I I don't even have to say to AI, do not include names. If I just say participants, often AI will generate some sort of text with me and they will put in brackets like participants. And so I know that I can enter names later. All right, the next AI best practice is to check for bias and accuracy. This is an AI image generator that my colleagues and I were using, and we just prompted it with create a picture of an adult reading tutor. And as you look at this, I'll just ask you, what do you see that's problematic? Couple things that, go ahead, sorry.
So just on the screen are four images.
Thank
So
you.
think about a quadrant, and the one on the upper left is a gentleman with grayish hair reading a book. The one on the right is a woman with long brown hair and glasses, also reading a book. The one on the lower left is a redhead with glasses, reading a book. And the one on the lower right is a male and a female. The male has glasses, the woman has long brownish hair, and again, they're consulting, looks more like a handout or pamphlet versus a traditional book.
Yeah, and I'm taking a look at the chat. A lot of people noticed right away the one in the bottom left corner, we are missing a head.
Oh,
Okay,
I didn't
so
even
it's
see
meant
that.
to be meant to be two people. The person on the right does not have a head. Other things that are problematic in the context of reading tutors, there's only one person in the two top ones, and so it doesn't show the action of actually tutoring. And then the proximity with which this person in the bottom right is sitting next to the person who's tutoring is problematic as well.
They appear to be a couple versus a
Yes,
tutor and a client. Yes,
that's a
it would
better
be,
description.
there could be some boundary issues there that fall under ethical guidelines.
Yes. Um, Another example here, we prompted an AI image generator with doctor walking in a hallway. And so this one, I think, so there again, there's four images. They are all men. Okay, so there is a clear gender bias here. And so when you prompt and you want to see diversity in gender, you need to ask for it. You need to ask for diversity in race or ethnicity. But I'm also noticing too, more and more often that AI is getting better at giving racial or ethnic diversity, but there's still a bias in age and ability. So when we look at all four of these doctors, not only are they all men, they all present as Caucasian, but they're all about the same age and visible physical ability. So to get some diversity in that, I do have to prompt AI. So this time I prompted it with doctor walking in a hallway with an assistive device. And again, we still get all men, but now we are showing some diversity in ability. So
And
that's bias.
just for the description, so the diversity is essentially Canadian crutches or canes are the assistive devices that the male Caucasian physicians in the hallway are utilizing.
Thank you. So that's an example of how to check for bias or accuracy with images. Here's an example of how I was using AI to generate a text. My prompt was to create a text about Martin Luther King Jr. and to write it at an NRS level 1. So NRS is the National Reporting System for Adult Education reading levels. So level 1 is a very basic reading level. I was specific. I said include quotes from Martin Luther King Jr. This is what I got. It was from ChatGPT. And as I was reading through it, I noticed it included quotes. It was a decent, it met the reading level requirements. but nowhere in this generated text does it acknowledge Martin Luther King's identity as a Black man. And so this is a different kind of bias. It's a bias of omission. So you also need to notice not what's included and if what's included is perpetuating stereotypes, but what was left out. So to correct that, I had to say, revise the text to include Martin Luther King's identity as an African American. And then it did. So that last best practice is when AI doesn't get it right, when it is inaccurate, or when it does show bias, we coach tutors, learners to do these actions. So to clarify and correct, you can ask AI to check its work. And here's a quick example of that. I was asking AI to look at a translation of some of my directions for laptops and to be consistent about when usted was used versus tu in Spanish. And it found, sorry for the scrolling if it's making you dizzy, it found 8 places where it was inconsistent. And I said, did you miss any other places where the to form is used in this script? And ChatGPT said, you're right to ask me to double check. I'll carefully review the document again. And when it did, instead of 8, it found 23 places. So asking it to check its work, to clarify and correct, is a great practice. One time I stumped ChatGPT and I had to circumvent my own prompting. I'll show you that example. I asked ChatGPT to create a fill in the blank, and I wanted it to be written at a second grade reading level. When it generated the text, sentence 4 says, if you feel strange after taking medicine, ask a grown-up. This is a problematic expression when you're working with adult learners. So I tried to clarify and correct. I said redo for an adult who reads at a second grade level. And I got a spinning wheel of death. Like ChatGPT just could not compute. And so it actually froze. I had to walk away from it. I came back the next day and I said, redo for an adult who reads at a second grade level. Remove the advice to ask a grown-up. The reader is a grown-up. So you have to be real clear with your prompting. And finally, another strategy when AI doesn't get it right is instead of asking it to generate brand new content, ask it to adapt existing content from a trusted source. So instead of asking for that Martin Luther King text, I could have taken, for example, this site, the King Center, the biography of Dr. King Jr. here, and asked ChatGPT to adapt this to an NRS reading level 1.
Jamie, this is Laura. And so
Mhm.
we do have one question. Well, we have a question and a statement. And I think I'd like the audience to hear your answer on this one. So are AIs biased by default? And, I know that speaks to just, where does it get its information? What's its learning model? I mean, that's a whole can of worms, but I'd love to hear your take on that question.
I
Garbage.
So I'm by no means an AI expert, and learning along with all of the rest of us, but I would say that, yeah, I think that because humans are biased, we have implicit bias, and AI was built by a human, there is always going to be some inherent bias. So I think as users of this tool, we always have to check for that bias.
Thank you. I do see garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah, I
So,
like that.
yep. And thanks, Jerry, for your comment and observation, just concern on, AI pulls from what is available in the public domain. And so as public domain shifts, we may see shifts in what AI is able to produce or generate.
If nothing else, when we correct AI, I think it's an excellent example of how to gracefully admit when you're wrong. ChatGPT is getting really good at this for me. So it was giving me an example, generate a 20-minute vegetarian dinner recipe using chicken, rice, and broccoli. And I said, this is contradictory. And it says, you're absolutely right. That example was contradictory. Upside down smiley face emoji. Thanks for catching that. So I think some of us can learn a lot from the graceful way that ChatGPT admits it's wrong. As I am working to encourage programs to integrate digital literacy, I often talk about the following instructional considerations for integrating digital literacy. The first one is that pre-assessment is essential. We want to be able to know what digital skills to start with as we work with clients or learners. So we need to know their prior knowledge, their goals, and something I call digital readiness, which is really three factors. It is their skills that they already have, so that prior knowledge, but it's also access. Do they have access to the internet? Do they have access to a device? And finally, it's attitude. How do they feel about approaching new technology or learning new technology? Another consideration for instruction is that technology integration is different from digital skill instruction. So I think a real easy way that I see tutors and instructors integrating technology is through online reading. So they might bring an online article to the lesson and ask learners to read it. This is technology integration, but you have to be able to name and explicitly teach a digital skill while you're integrating it in order to consider that digital skill instruction. And ideally, that skill should transfer to other contexts. So I ask tutors and instructors to think about what digital skills do we need when we're reading an online article? And let's assume that I've already found the article, I've logged into the computer, and the article is on the screen. Even after that, I can isolate some digital skills that I might want to teach my learner. The first one being, where do I look? Okay, so often we have a sidebar either on the right or the left that is not the main text. So I want to coach learners to know that they look sort of in the middle for the title and the text. I could also teach icon recognition. So these little carrots here, these arrows, help me know that I can advance the images and look at other images. If I need to hear the text, I'm looking for this icon that looks like a speaker. If I want the text to be bigger, this icon, the A that gets larger, often transfers to other contexts in other websites. So that is a digital skill that I could teach that transfers. Another instructional consideration, especially since we have tutors that are working with English learners, is to understand that digital proficiency and language or literacy proficiency aren't necessarily the same thing. So we could have a beginning English learner who's quite proficient in digital skills, and then I'm not necessarily teaching the skill. I'm going to spend more time teaching the English vocabulary for that skill. I could also have the opposite situation where I have somebody who really needs to learn the digital skills because they're a digital beginner, but they're quite proficient in the language or in reading and writing. And so I'm going to spend more time actually having the learner doing the skill and less time like worrying about or prioritizing the vocabulary for that skill.
And Jamie, this is Laura. And so that's something that you do teach your tutors is to try to recognize that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, because I worked with a young woman who was deaf and from another country with zero English skills, a young woman. And it was just fascinating because this person was able to use to navigate the whole entire bus system of a metropolitan area independently, but did not have functional English skills, for in our country. So I think that was an example of your first, point on there, that this person was digitally proficient, with an iPad and an iPhone, but lacked any functional literacy.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great example. And then we often have, discussions with tutors and instructors about like, is it okay if they're coming for English, like an ESL class? Is it okay to do some of our instruction in their first language or their preferred language? And so we talk about when we're prioritizing that digital skill versus the speaking and the communicating in English. Both are needed, but sometimes each lesson is going to have a different balance of that. And the last instructional consideration, we talk about a digital skill and access divide, but we also have something called the digital use divide. This is a term coined by the National Education Technology Plan, and it means the gap between passive consumption of technology and active skill building engagement in educational settings. So, do we provide learners opportunities to create with digital technology and not just receive or consume information? This is an aspirational instructional consideration. I always have to assure tutors and instructors that we don't need to start there by teaching learners how to create, but we need to get there. All right, so I'd like to offer you some approaches to integrating digital literacy. These are by no means copyrighted terms. I made them up myself, but it's a way that helps me think about how to integrate digital technology or digital literacy, and also how to talk about it with tutors and instructors. So approach one is, where does digital literacy naturally fit? If you are a visual person, I created this visual. So this blue line going across the screen represents the content that you might be teaching. And for our instructors, it's ESL, it's GED preparation. And then I'm going to drop in some red and pink dots on that line. And that represents digital literacy. So when it naturally fits, I'm going to include it or integrate it. Questions that you can ask yourself as you're taking this approach: what digital skills will be needed to complete this lesson? How can I use digital tools to enhance this lesson? And is there an authentic digital task that goes well with the content learning? Here are some examples of that approach. This first one is an ELL lesson. It comes from a workbook that many of our members use. It's the Ventures series. And so if I ask myself, how can I use digital tools to enhance this lesson, and what digital skills will be needed to complete this lesson? On the left here on the screen, I'm also going to model for you a 3-part lesson template that I recommend. So the first thing is to start maybe with a digital warm-up. And I've noticed in this workbook that it has QR codes that learners can scan to access multimedia resources. So my digital skill warm-up, I'm going to first need to teach learners how to use QR codes. How do we scan them? Then I do my content lesson, which is page 100 in the Ventures textbook. And so we're learning grammar, do and does and doesn't. Does he serve food? No, he doesn't. Does he clean buildings? No, he doesn't. Yes, she does. And then how do we integrate those skills? This is the application of the digital skill and the content lesson. So I'm going to ask learners to scan the QR codes to access the textbook multimedia. So really, this one was pretty easy because the curriculum built that digital skill in for us. Here's another example lesson. This one comes from a forthcoming curriculum from Wisconsin Literacy for teaching English for driving. So you can see on the right, it is a roundabout directions activity. I might start my lesson with a digital skill warm-up of using a GPS app to get directions. Make sure that learners know how to enter a destination, how to choose a route if the app offers multiple routes, and ensure the audio works on their phone. Then I do my content lesson. So this one is understanding how to use roundabout intersections and the exits. And then I integrate. So can you follow an oral GPS directions at a roundabout? So when they tell you to take the second exit, what does that mean? They tell you to take the third exit, what does that mean? This last example comes from the National Digital Inclusion Alliance. They actually just partnered with a community-based organization called Winston Net that had an existing curriculum. Their class was called Technology Skills for Life and Employment. So they already had an existing technology curriculum, and this is an example of how they integrated AI into that. So again, using that approach number one, where does digital literacy, or in this case, AI literacy, naturally fit? So if we're already talking about navigating the internet, we can include understanding generative AI in web searches. If we're already talking about email account setup, we can include AI in email basics, etc. So I'd like us to get some practice trying this approach of where do digital and AI skills naturally fit. In just a minute, I'm going to invite you to hop onto a collaborative digital whiteboard so we can add some ideas. Before we do that, I'd like to show you an example. So on the whiteboard, you'll see lots of just daily living skills. So this one is applying for a job, and the whiteboard will be divided into three categories. The traditional literacy, I've already filled out for us, but the digital literacy and the AI literacy is what I'm asking for your help to brainstorm. So if we think about applying for a job, traditional literacy requires that we know how to read a job description, understand the qualifications, and write a resume and a cover letter. Where does digital literacy naturally fit in that skill? We could teach clients or learners to create an online profile, to navigate job boards, to type and upload documents like resumes. Where does AI literacy naturally fit? You want to be able to understand that AI filters may scan resumes for keywords and know how to adjust your language to get through those filters, and also to use AI writing tools responsibly to refine a resume or a cover letter. So here's the whiteboard. I built it with Padlet Sandbox. You can access the whiteboard by using this shortened URL. It's wislit.org/ capital D, capital L, capital A, capital I. I also can offer you the QR code if you're using a tablet or a phone. The phone version is a little small to work with, but it is possible. I'll keep that QR code up for just a second. Oops, less than a second. All right, and then here on the left, there are cards. That's what Padlet calls them. And each card has a different topic. So we already did applying for a job. There's grocery shopping, paying bills, using public transit, and cooking a meal. So I invite you to start on any card that speaks to you where you've got ideas. If you know how to use Padlet Sandbox, go ahead and start brainstorming. If you don't, I'll just do a quick demo. So on the right is where you have all your tools. And so I'm using a sticky note here, a note. So I click on that. I can choose my color by clicking there. And then I get this little cross, and I can then click wherever I want the sticky note to be. The cursor starts flashing, and then I can type an idea. I have to click outside of the sticky note once I'm done with my idea to be able to move the sticky note around. If Padlet just isn't working for you, and you'd like to put some ideas in the chat, that also works. But again, we're using this Padlet to practice that approach number one. Where does digital literacy, where does AI literacy naturally fit?
This is Laura. Looks like we're getting a little bit of input there. Jamie, this is Laura. While folks are putting things in, I saw, one of the topics is using public transportation or accessing public areas. And one thing that always comes to mind is whenever I'm in a location where I have to use a parking meter or a parking garage. Um, I personally just prefer to plunk the little coins in, or take my ticket and put my credit card in. But many of those have gone completely digital now. And
Yes,
so not only do you have to recognize that that is your only choice, um, and they're not a universal app. So then you have to have the ability to use that QR or to type in that URL for that specific parking meter or parking garage, um, which also does require you from a broadband access, that you have the bandwidth, the ability to do that, so that crosses over to our access, which is not the topic of today, but there's just a lot of skills just to, you want to park to run into, the courthouse, and you just can't put a quarter in anymore.
exactly. I see a comment in the chat. I don't know how to get a sticky note. I'm not sure if your view is different from mine, what device you're using. My tools are on the right, and there's like a little square with a bent corner. So I click on that note, I choose a color, and then I have to actually click on the page where I want that sticky note. Alternatively, the big T in the toolbox is for a text box, so you could just put a text box in. Um, and type inside that text box. These are great. I'm specifically looking at the AI ideas because I I didn't have any pre-planned answers for this column before I did this presentation. So I'm really learning from you all. First, like what you know about AI and then how we could use it. I love in the cooking the meal card, you can ask AI to suggest a meal based on the ingredients you have in the house. You can ask AI to convert a recipe too if it's in like for example milliliters or in weight and you want it in cups. Ooh, and
Jamie, I
using
use AI for that. This is Laura.
have you?
Yeah, I have, my mom has a homemade brownie recipe that she had done, and so I like to make her brownies versus, I don't use a box. And,
Hmm.
but I never have the Baker brand chocolate squares. And so you need a substitution. And you'd think I would just write it down, but I don't. Because you can use butter and cocoa powder, but there's a
Mm.
ratio. So yeah, I'm always needing to say, what's the ratio? What's the substitution for Baker chocolate squares unsweetened? Again,
In public trans using public transit, AI literacy might be have AI suggest a route to accomplish specific tasks or see specific sites. Love that.
or avoid busy roads. If you're
Yes.
a pedestrian or a bicyclist, you may want to know that bike route or safe route.
All right. If you continue to have ideas, I encourage you to put them on this Padlet. I'm going to go back to my slides. And just to recap, what we were doing there is we were practicing what I call approach number one. So we're thinking about where does digital literacy naturally fit in our content. We're just going to plunk it in from time to time when it makes sense. There are some advantages and disadvantages to this approach that I want to point out. It is a great try it out approach. It's often what I have the most success with, encouraging tutors and instructors to start with. Just try it out. When it works naturally, do it because the connections aren't forced. One disadvantage that I could point out is that it's definitely giving learners a sampling of digital literacy and AI literacy skills that are not necessarily systematic or progressive. So one lesson or one unit, we might be learning about how to use a GPS app, and then the next lesson, we're learning about email. And so we're not progressing in one specific digital skill. So that's where approach two comes in. Approach two, we'll ask ourselves, what specific digital skill goal have I or students identified? And how can I make progress on this goal in every lesson? So visually, I have here this blue line at the top. It's straight. It represents the content that I already teach. The red line below it is digital or AI literacy. And as we move forward, we want those lines to approach so that we're teaching both every single time. Sometimes that digital goal for students is determined by circumstances. So, for example, as I'm distributing laptops to our member agencies, they now have found that it makes sense to have a goal where all of their students are learning about basic computer skills. Or if they're doing virtual learning, suddenly all learners have the goal of needing to learn how to use Zoom features. For this approach two, some questions that you can ask yourself: how do I fit this digital skill into the content lesson? Is there an authentic task that combines both the digital and the content learning? And if I can't combine them, have I created routines and time for both digital skills and content skills? So I want to take you through a couple examples again, but this time we'll pick a goal. So the digital skill goal is use email to communicate with an employer, a doctor, child's teacher, anything. If we're going to teach that digital skill in every lesson, you'll see a progression of skills. So it might start with setting up and managing an account. Then we learn how to write an email, how to follow email etiquette, and how to stay safe and avoid phishing or spam. So how do we make progress on that goal in each lesson? Excuse me. So here's this example lesson again from the Ventures curriculum. This is an ELL lesson. But now instead of just plunking in QR codes because it naturally fits, we're going to figure out how does email fit in this lesson. I'll use this same three-part lesson plan template. So a digital skill warm-up, I might start with talking about professional email usernames and how to choose one that's professional versus not professional. Then I'll do my content lesson where we work on this grammar for does and doesn't. To integrate them, it might just look like a conversation this time in English where we're practicing the vocabulary of professional email username, but we're also using this grammar. So I could ask, does she have a good username? coffeelover124@gmail.com. And students would have to answer, yes, she does, or no, she doesn't. Here's the roundabout lessons. So now I'm progressing in my email skills. I want to be able to determine or have my students determine if an email is from a trusted source and if links within it are safe. So I might just start with a warm up with like that. Then we'll do my content lesson where we're learning about roundabouts and how they work. And you're probably thinking, Jamie, how are you about to combine email and roundabouts? Here's one idea. I could send learners an email with a link to a short video about roundabouts. First, I want them to determine if that email is safe. And then when they can tell me it's safe, watch that video and reply to the email to summarize their learning. Can we go back to our Padlet and try this approach? And really what this will look like now is I'm hoping some people have added email as a skill to some of these so we can just circle them. But if they haven't, if we don't see any email, where could we add it? I'll go through and look for anybody that said email and I'll try to circle it. So maybe password safety and security could be part of emailing. email and social media to share recipes. All right, as a group, I'll give us just a couple minutes to think about where else could we add email or how does email work with each of those skills. If you close the Padlet and you want to get back to it, it is wislit.org/DLAI. The DLAI is all capital letters. One I just thought of for paying bills. I get so many scam emails that say, your order receipt is included or your bill is past due. And so that is another place to connect to paying bills and staying safe with email. All right, I'm going to go back to my slides. And so we just practiced there by trying to add email skills to each of those life skills was that approach too. So what are students' specific digital skill goals? How can you make progress on them in every single lesson? You probably notice that it has its advantages and disadvantages, this approach. It's very systematic, so learners will have visible progress in a digital skill goal. They'll learn a lot about email in this example. It also is a great approach for building routine, both for the student comes to expect that we're always going to do one content lesson and then one email lesson. It also builds routine for an instructor. So an instructor gets lots of practice remembering, oh, I have to include the digital skill in this lesson. Some disadvantages are that connections might not always be obvious. It was a stretch, I think, for a lot of us to include email in our brainstorming. It's also hard to do if you're teaching multiple people. So if you have a class and they have multiple goals and they're not the same, this approach becomes challenging. I'm not seeing anything in the chat. Were there any questions about the approaches?
And this is Laura. I'm not seeing any other questions in the Q&A or anything.
Okay. So, because I think approach 2 is a great place to get us in the habit of creating routines, I do want to mention some instructional routines that you can use to integrate digital literacy. Routines will increase predictability and reduce stress for learners. And they also create accountability for integrating digital literacy for instructors. I work with a lot of language instructors, and language teachers are excellent at creating classroom routines. So I have a short video to show you. This is an ELL instructor, and she's going to use a question answer routine with her students. This also happens to be a great example of tech integration. So in the background of her classroom, she has a smart board, and she's pretty savvy at using this smart board. So I'd like you to watch the video. Besides integrating the technology, though, she's not teaching these students any digital skills. So my question to you is, as you're watching it, lead. I'm going to make sure I'm sharing the sound.
And Jamie, does this video have captions? And if so, could you enable them? Perfect. Thanks.
Yes. And are you hearing the sound as well?
I believe so, yes. Go ahead.
Let's practice
Yeah.
one time together. How many
days
days until Thanksgiving? There are 10 days until Okay, Moya, how many days until Thanksgiving?
There are 10 days until Thanksgiving.
Yay! Okay. Yeah.
How many days until Thanksgiving?
Very good. Very good.
How many days attend the gym?
Okay. There are 10 days until Thanksgiving. Becky,
Yes.
how many days until Thanksgiving?
There are 10 days until Thanksgiving.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So there was a birthday going on in the classroom next to that classroom when I filmed it. So if you heard the birthday and then it was very hard to hear the second student, I apologize for that. But we have this question answer routine. How many days until Thanksgiving? There are 10 days until, using the calendar on the smart board. How could this routine lead to digital skill building for students? How can we integrate some of that into this routine? Any ideas?
And throw all your ideas into the chat, please. Great. Have them look at the calendar on their phones.
Love that.
Yep.
Yes. So it's really like almost all of the learners that we work with come with a phone. And so teaching them how to use the calendar app, or even just including that, because it is a daily life skill in this routine, would be great. And then they can count themselves how many days. You could also extend that. Typically, holidays are marked in the calendar, but you could extend that by teaching them how to create an event in their calendar. And maybe they call it Thanksgiving, or we're working on a different day or a different holiday. Look up GIFs about Thanksgiving. Love that. Ooh, countdown apps. That would be fun too. The other way to create routines, especially because I noticed that the smartboard is part of the teacher's routine when she uses this calendar, is something called EdTech routines. So educational technology or EdTech is when we use technology in the education setting. And an EdTech routine, we want to move from the teacher using the technology to the students using it. And this is a way to move from consumption to creation. So the students are doing the creating. But we can scaffold that as we do this ed tech routine. So here's an example. A teacher might be very used to using PowerPoint or Google Slides for vocabulary review as a form of flashcards. So the teacher stands up in front of the class and clicks through it and we review vocabulary. But maybe that then she calls on a student to come up and advance the slides or multiple students. So first the students are getting used to just that skill. Can you advance the slides? Then we move or we jump from the teachers creating one slide, so it's the word, and then the students are creating the next slide or the definition. And in that way, the students get to create and they become familiar with PowerPoint or Google Slides. And finally, students can create their own personal dictionaries with slides. In addition to ed tech routines, Wisconsin Literacy has built an AI checklist that walks people through what they should be aware of, what should they check as they're using generative AI. So we talk about incorporating this into lessons as a routine. And I'll mention, I think, Laura, you'll be sharing slides with participants. So this is linked in the slides and everyone would have access then to this resource. But our checklist is really just what I talked about as far as best practices. So enter a prompt. Consider including these things in your prompt and avoid including personal information or not yet released information or documents. The second step is to review the output. So we check for accuracy. My favorite part of this checklist is this one. Do the images defy the laws of physics? Check for bias. And then clarify and correct. So this checklist offers some examples of what you could say as far as clarifying prompts or correcting prompts. And then the last step in that checklist is repeat the steps in the checklist till you get what you want. So this checklist is another way to build routines as you're integrating AI skills. If you're specifically teaching the language of digital literacy or AI literacy, building in a vocabulary routine can also be helpful. I haven't talked much about this resource yet, but North Star Digital Literacy was created by Literacy Minnesota. It is a curriculum, I believe it has, I want to say 16 units on foundational basic digital skills. They have also created warm-ups. So these are slides that instructors can use just to review vocabulary. They are geared toward ESL classrooms, but I think that they work for all learners. So today we will find important parts of our devices, turn devices on, turn devices off. And this one, which device are you using today? Today I am using and you have choices here. You have images and the words. So we're building in a routine where we review that vocabulary every lesson and we get learners to use the digital vocabulary. North Star has these vocabulary warm-up slides for their their basic computer skills lesson unit, their email unit, and their internet unit so far, and they continue to create more. Another strategy that is specific to language learning, but I think it works everywhere, is called total physical response, or TPR, almost like Simon Says. So the teacher gives the command and the student performs an action. So we're working on the vocabulary and the student is showing understanding by doing the action. This is specifically, like you see here, great for finding keys on the keyboard. So click the Enter key, click the space bar, click a J or an A. Those are ways to build vocabulary routines into lessons or teaching. Another great thing that I learned from North Star Digital Literacy, they have paper-based lessons for all of their units. And in every lesson, they include a section they call Pair Explore. A Pair Explore routine encourages students to work together. So it's a co-learning environment. The teacher is there for support, but it's really a chance to build digital independence and resilience because they're trying it on their own. It's very hands-on. And because you have two peers talking to each other, it's going to build a language around the digital skill as well. And the last routine that I'll mention is something you saw me demoing already, but I do encourage instructors as they're just getting started, especially to integrate digital skills, to think of it as a 3-part lesson plan. So start with a digital skill warm-up, do your typical content lesson, whatever you would have done anyway, and then integrate. I get a lot of tutors asking me, yeah, but what does that digital skill warm-up look like? So I also created a template for that. And again, you'll have access to this. But that digital skill warm-up, I really encourage instructors or tutors to keep that to 5 to 10 minutes only. You'll talk about some vocabulary. You can introduce the skill by showing a video, explaining in plain language, or demonstrating the skill yourself. And then the student, you're going to offer them just a quick practice opportunity. Maybe it's an online exercise, maybe it's a worksheet, maybe it's something else. On this digital skill warm-up template, if you choose to check it out, I think one of the most beneficial things is that the second page of it has a list of digital literacy teaching resources. So if I want to teach this skill, are there any resources out there that already exist? There are, and many are linked here. Which brings me to the resources part of this presentation. So the first resource is to think about any frameworks or curricula that already exist. So what skills should you be teaching for digital literacy or AI literacy? And how do I break them down? So North Star, again, excuse me, is a great resource. It offers digital literacy standards. I'll click into those. So they divide their units into 3 categories: essential computer skills, essential software skills, and using technology in daily life. And then multiple units fall under those categories. For each of those units, they will break it down into standards. So what does it mean to have basic computer skills? They have broken that down into 18 standards. The entire North Star curriculum, which includes assessments and online practice and teacher-led lessons, is a paid feature, but there are lots of things on the North Star site that are available to the public for free. These standards are one of them, and then also the assessments. Anybody can take an assessment from any of those units for free. It's the online practice and the teacher-led lessons and the learner management system that you get with a paid version. Bridges Digital Skill Framework is another framework I like for breaking down digital literacy into skills. Bridges is also part of the World Education Organization and their project. So you can see it breaks it down into foundational, productivity, independent learning skills. And then within those, we have gateway skills, mobile skills, device ownership, privacy, and security. One thing I like about Bridges is if I click, and I'm not always as familiar with how this works, but if I click on these skills, I can explore the domain. And one of the ways that I can explore it is resources here. And I can type in something that I'm looking for. Let's see if this will work. No results found. Okay, so it breaks it down into skills. There's a way, here it is. There's a way to find free lessons and resources. So here, if I click on, it's because accessibility features is not part of email, but it is going to give me open educational resources for teaching these skills. So they come from all different things. So North Star Digital Literacy actually has a free version here. We have GCF, that's the Goodwill Industries, learnfree.org. So what I really like about Bridges is that it's a way to also search for free resources once you've broken it down into those skills. And finally, there aren't a lot of AI frameworks that exist because it's so new and it's happening and evolving at such a quick pace. But UNESCO, the United Nations, has put out AI competency frameworks, both for students and for learners. This tool right here, the project-based learning planner, I created with inspiration from a world education document. So if you would like to use this, it could help you plan based on what you already do. And it is linked to North Star Digital Literacy Framework standards. And then there's another version on another page that's linked to Bridges digital skill frameworks. So here, what digital skills fit with this topic? So traditionally in an ELL class, we start with introductions. I can use this template then to select how I want to connect that to a digital skill. So I've selected here Microsoft PowerPoint and then just written out for my planning purposes, how will they connect? So introductions often happen at the beginning of public speaking and can be supported by visuals. So the project we'll use to integrate those is that students will create an About Me PowerPoint slide and present to the tutor or class. So I invite you to use this template if it helps in your work. Also have this slide here for resources for teaching digital skills. So again, there's North Star Library. The Digital Skills Library is part of the Bridges. So that is where, I've lost it now. Here it is. That is where you can search for these open educational resources. Google Applied Digital Skills has some great curriculum for like more advanced digital skills. Microsoft Digital Literacy as well. ISTE has a free curriculum for hands-on AI projects for the classroom. Senior Planet, put out by AARP, has an AI page, so how to talk to senior citizens about AI. And then I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation that open prompt book from Camp GPT. So this is just really clear instructions and advice for how to prompt AI. And that is all I have for you all, but I am here. My email is on the screen. It's my name, Jamie, Jamie, at wisconsinliteracy.org. Love to continue the conversation with you. If you have questions, you can let me know. And I'm also here to answer questions now.
Great, thank you. Yes, you will get the handout. I will be getting it into PDF, accessible PDF for everyone. So give a little grace on the time for that, but you will receive that via email to those that attended. And I think, Jamie, one thing that I'd be curious how folks think about, so much of the work that the folks attending are, we have our eye on kind of the assistive technology lens. And so I think it's important to remember how we might be able to integrate. We might be just teaching how to, actually turn on a device, how to not turn it on, how to update apps, or other types of technology like note-taking tools. And I think the information that you shared it'll be easy to integrate just some of those, even if it's just the baby steps, little tiny things on that digital literacy component. And I think everyone is excited about AI and wants to, give it a whirl, especially those that aren't necessarily exposed to it. So I think I can really see how this applies to, the work that those on the call are doing. Yeah, someone's sharing that they were on the webinar last week and learned about the Goblin tools, which are specific. I don't know if you are familiar with or used those before. Okay.
I'm not, no.
Yeah. So for example, creating a recipe from ingredients, you can do with a brain dump and it compiles a list, as well as the magic to-do list, which breaks down a task into manageable steps. So some of this may be good for you to pass along with your tutor network.
Yes.
And I'll make sure that you have a link to our YouTube channel. So we've had 2 or 3 on AI this year. Obviously, it's a hot topic.
Yeah.
Do you have preference on the different options of AI platforms to use? There's so many now: ChatGPT, Copilot, generative. So she said, sorry if you already covered that. But do you have much experience using, I know you shared your use of ChatGPT, and do you use the paid or the non-paid for that?
Yeah. So 1, I didn't cover it, so no worries. 2, I am definitely a creature of habit. So I started using ChatGPT. That was sort of my entry into AI, and I continued to use it because it was working for me, which is not to say that Google's version or Microsoft's version are not great either. I just have the most experience using ChatGPT. I do not use a paid version currently of ChatGPT. So I don't have a whole lot of experience in like what else it could do for me that it's not already doing for me. I do, however, have some experience with 2 tools, AI tools that are built specifically for teachers. One is called Diffit. I believe I'll just write the word in the chat. I believe it's like a shortened version of differentiation. So you can use this. It helps you create vocabulary lists, comprehension questions, and it can generate text for you at different reading levels. The other one is called Magic School, and I've used it exclusively for text adaptation and text generation for reading material, but it has all sorts of, it's like a collection of AI tools that teachers might want to use.
Okay, great. And our May speaker, April Pearson, does use a paid version, and she did go into some of those differences, Alyssa. So I encourage you to check out that recording because she shared some differences in and essentially the learning model is less current in the free version versus the paid. That was one of the takeaways. So it's a little bit of you get what you pay for kind of model. I personally have only used the free version myself. So that's great to know. And then the next, Rick shares that as a note, AI can be relatively safe if you restrain from providing personal data. Still, the safest AI platform, this is from Rick, is Proton Lumo AI due to the zero access encryption. So I was not familiar with that one. As a state employee, we are still awaiting policy on AI use. So my use of AI has been on a personal level versus a professional level at this point. So any other questions or comments that anyone would like to share? I'd like to make sure you get all of the information you're dying to know. Well, we've got Jamie here with us. I'd be curious just if you want to put a yes or no in the chat. How many of you actually have used an AI tool? Do a Y or a no or an. I'm just curious. I should have done your waterfall, Jamie. So I've got one no, a couple no's. I personally find it interesting to use ChatGPT, but I'm also a person that my brain thinks as I compose,
Mhm.
and so and some of it's also that kinesthetic process. So either handwriting or typing helps me generate my thoughts, and so I wouldn't use the word cheating when I describe, using prompts to get information. But it's almost as if I'm having someone else write for me, and it's not necessarily me.
Yes, I get that. I'm finding because I have used ChatGPT to draft some documents or to draft emails, especially when I'm tired. But I spend a lot more time in the prompting part and then on the really thinking about tone, organization, and clarity of message. So I spend more time thinking about those things and that part of writing than the actual composition. But I do agree with you that there's something to be said for composing yourself and making sure that you're working through those ideas as you write.
Yeah, and just another teaser for our May AI session with April. She had shared she was writing a resume and cover letter for a position that she wanted, and she's a huge fan, uses AI a lot, and she shared that she utilized those edit tools and some of that customization around tone
Mhm.
because she wanted the resume and the cover letter to reflect her, but also balance professional with who she is and what she does. And she had taken a 2-year hiatus professionally. So, how to incorporate that into a cover letter. And she said, I think it was like 10 edits before she ended up with a product that she felt reflected her, um, represented that hiatus appropriately for the position. So I think that was kind of an interesting example that she was able to share.
Yeah, that is interesting. And again, too, it just reinforces that idea that there is a lot of clarifying, correcting, and conversation that you're having with AI in order to get the product that you want.
And we do have a couple other comments. Heather, they are working on an AI policy at her college. Someone who uses Grammarly. Alyssa has a recruiter friend that assists people with reworking their resume, and they use AI within the job description to rewrite that resume content. Well, we know AI is screening all of our resumes that we send out, so we may as well meet them, play their own game. I taught AI to play Battleship against another AI using a spreadsheet for the board. The one that was better at it was an absolute cheater. The other one had zero sense of efficiency and a very short memory, but would also try to cheat by taking extra moves. It was really fun to watch two large language models try to figure out something that seems pretty basic. The funniest part is that both AIs act giddy when taught to play a game, but if you call them out on how excitable they seem, they actually start to act mad at the idea of sentence, and it makes make that user chuckle at that too. So that the AI trying to inflect the human aspect of it. And you shared a little bit of that, Jamie, when it said, well, you're absolutely right. So that would not be considered a vegetarian,
Right.
So, all right. So any other comments or questions? All right. Well, I'll just do our kind of our closing housekeeping, and then if you do think of anything else, feel free to pop it in the chat. So again, thank you for attending WisTech, Wisconsin's Assistive Technology Program, 5th webinar for this year. And this has been recorded and will be archived on our YouTube channel. I will be sending out an accessible PDF of the slide deck within the next few days. You will receive a survey when I close the webinar, and that's your opportunity to provide feedback, as well as it is required if you're wanting CRCs or CEUs. And then you will also get a follow-up email saying, thank you for attending, and here's another chance to take that survey tomorrow. We will be also sending out a survey in the next month to a month and a half, just gathering input and ideas for what topics you'd like to see for next year's round of webinars. WisTech does 4 to 5 of these per year, and we are always looking for, what do you want to learn about, so we can find some speakers and bring that information to you. So I see some thank yous in the chat, and thank you, Jamie, and thanks everyone for attending.
Everyone.
Have a great rest of your week, everybody. Take care.